Yo, peace, peace, and grand evening. Welcome to RockTrue Beatz. I'm your host, Marley King, as always, and also recognize me as Chris Lyon. We're getting really close to the springtime here. We got the spring equinox right around the corner, roughly 2 weeks away. You understand? And like I was saying, man, Chris Lyon, you're gonna see a lot more of me come springtime. Coming out of that hibernation period, and we're gonna really get down and dirty this year. A lot of wild foraging ventures coming on, but nonetheless, just excuse me, man. Got a lot going on. Y'all need to apologize really quick. A lot going on. I'm just getting settled down. All right. No, enough respect. Nonetheless, man. Grand evening to everybody out there, man, near and far, home and abroad. There's been a lot going on in this world. It's been an eventful week for myself. I know it's been an eventful week for many other folks out there as well. And it's important that we wind down this evening time and put some wonderful fat on your head, expand the mind a little bit, open up the consciousness a little bit. Today we got a grand show in store for you. You understand? And we're going to be diving really deep into some serious topics. And the topic that we're going to get into this evening time has to deal with plant music. You understand? And plant music is a deep subject. It's a subject that hardly nobody talks about. And it's something that is very sacred to ourselves as well. And only to be able to hear the way the plants communicate through the signals and such, it's a beautiful piece, man. But nonetheless, we got a grand show this evening time. So let's start. Let's jump into it. Let's talk a little bit about plant music, man. When we think about plant music, we're thinking about, the different frequencies that come out of the plant. When we think of any plant, plants are electromagnetic beings, just like ourselves as well, meaning that we have a type of electromagnetivity. You understand? We're just electromagnetic beings, and we have these small impulses that can be measured that come out of each and every pore in the body. And the plants have the same exact nature, running all through them is these small electric impulses, and these things are really, really keen to how the plant, to how the plant thinks or how the plant reacts to everything. And this could be measured by different waves and frequencies. So a pretty neat device that I came across about a year ago, and I really started putting to use recently, was a device called Plant Wave. And Plant Wave is a device created out in California by a cat, and he decided to hook up what they call like electrodes. And you're probably familiar with these if you have like one of those, stimulating machines that you use for like your muscles and your joints and such whenever you're having pains. It's a really good stimulator, but these pick up the electric impulses coming off of your skin or off of a certain medium, like for example the plant leaves and such. So it's a pretty deep piece. And they also have clips like this, which also have similar design inside of the clips here that allow it to pick up the magnetic impulses from the magnetic pulses rather coming off of the plants. And these are just little clips as well. So it's a pretty convenient one, especially for smaller leaved plants. When you're dealing with foliage that's maybe thin and long, like on a fern, for example, it's a really serious piece to hook this up to, because when you try to hook up these pads, you don't have a good result. So it's interesting. Nonetheless, this is the Plant Wave device here. You understand? It looks so small. So small. How can you think something so small can make such big contributions to being able to detect the music or the frequency coming out of plants? Well, inside this device right here, there's a piece of machinery, a couple of like microchips maybe so. They have some algorithms in there that are able to map out the particular electromagnetic pulses that are coming in through the pads or through the clips. And in turn, it's able to map out a particular wave, and that wave is assigned a pattern. It's very, very similar. Like I said, we're talking RockTrue Beatz here. You understand? So it's something very similar when we talk about music and we're in the lab for production, or anybody who's in there making beats or dealing with wave files for instruments to make instrumentals. And this is pretty much the same property, the same way. These particular beats or these different sounds that we're hearing, these synthesizers, these different instruments, these drum patterns and such, they're all measured into a wavelength, and that's why it's called a wave file. You understand? That's not what the acronym stands for, but nonetheless, we call it a wave file for similar reasons. And when we take those files and we plug them up to like a synthesizer or so, or how this one already has a synthesizer not built into it, but there's an app on the phone. You understand? And you download the app on your phone, and you're able to connect it to Bluetooth. Now the app on your phone, whether or not you have an iPhone or an Android, you're able to go ahead and take the app and cipher through different synthesizers that they have built in already. You understand? And as the waves or as the pulses come in and the waves begin to register inside this little computer, we'll call it, is able to be computed and to be put out into a form of sound, and it's really beautiful. Unfortunately, I don't have this one charged up. You understand? So it's gonna be something that we get into this next week, right around the spring solstice. You understand? Like we said, we got a show on the second and the last Monday, the second and the last Tuesdays. Y'all have to excuse me. I've been running a strong schedule this whole week. You understand? All just to make it back here for 6 o'clock, man, to bring out something grand. You understand? So nonetheless, we're going to be getting into this here in the next 2 weeks when we come back on the show. And I'm going to be hooking this up to some particular plants and such, some house plants maybe around the way, or hopefully we'll have some development already occurring outside so we can get outside and maybe with a little bit of light, we can go ahead and hook these particular clips or pads up to the plants and be able to get a reading from something more in its natural environment per se. You know what I'm saying? But it's going to be an interesting piece, man. I really take y'all on a journey with that. But this device has really allowed people to connect with nature so much more, you know, especially for us living in the time of technology or in the technological age. We think about a plant device like this, and we think about how everybody is just connected to MP3s and phones, and you even see people out in nature all the time listening to music. Well, what a better, you understand what I'm trying to say? What a better, or what not a better way than to use a device like this that could really get you back in tune with your natural surroundings, and you could really feel that much deeper a connection with the source, man, or the plants around you. You know, we always think about looking into one particular spectrum of light, seeing through one wavelength, hearing through one wavelength, but there's so many more around us, and to be able to tap in like that, it really adds a lot of a clarification, and it also brings a really sense of connectivity or being back in tune with Mother Nature. You know what I'm saying? So it's a really deep piece, and I encourage everybody to check these out. Plant Wave, PLANTWAVE, Plant Wave. They're on Instagram, and I'm sure you can get to their website by getting onto Google and typing that in and such. You know, so it's a good way to get in contact with it and be able to order yourself one. I've got a couple of these, man. I got a next one. I think I borrowed it to a friend, and we've had some pretty good results on different succulent plants and also like lemon trees. You got a lemon tree growing as well, Meyer lemon. I think we did, what was the other plant? We did aloe plant, and we did a rosemary. That's what we've done quite a few on the indoor plants, you know, and it's going to be interesting to take the journey outdoors, especially for the summertime, and hook it up to speaker. And it's really going to bring about a sense of being back in tune or connectivity with Mother Nature. So it's a really deep piece. I'm enjoying it myself. I give it 5 stars if you ask me. You know, the only thing I would change on for Androids, seems like everything iPhone is always super advanced, and Androids, they always just, you know, let it lag behind. But I'm still stuck with the Android. So I wish that they would go ahead and make more synthesizer sounds for the Android. But with that being said, I'm pretty sure, because this is a MIDI device, that you could hook this up to your MIDI controller and cipher through different sounds, or even, you know, record it into a particular recording program. And I think that would be a real interesting piece to work with as well. So you understand, be a really nice thing for everybody to get in tune with this coming spring or summer, or any particular time in your life, you know. Took me a few weeks to save up for this, but it's something that, you know, has really had a profound impact on me and my studies, you know, really taking the studies into the field. We could always study in books, and we could always listen to video on YouTube and read up and such, but nothing better than conducting field studies. I think that's very important, you know, especially when we looking to, you know, discover things that cannot be seen, you know, and more so have to be heard. You know, you have to be around certain things. You think about the leaves blowing, you know, who would think that a tree could be heard if it fell in the woods, you know, and nobody was around to hear it. But it's making some type of sound, so somebody's hearing it. You understand? So it's a pretty deep piece. And something that I also found interesting as well is that this not only registers from, and I guess this adds to the validity behind this particular device. You could take these pads, and you don't necessarily have to hook it up to just plant life. You could hook these up to wild mushrooms, per se. You come across chicken of the woods out there, or come across pheasant backs or wine caps, or rishis. You could take these particular pads or clips, and you could hook those things up to the particular object that you're looking to get a reading from. And I've also done this myself. I've hooked it up to my fingers, like I put the pad onto my thumb, and it reads it the same way. So I've seen videos and other people talking about they've hooked it up to like the paw of the dog, the pad on the dog's foot, and they've also got readings and play back particular instruments. But these are just beautiful sounds, and the particular waves inside of this device, as the electromagnetic pulses fluctuate within the plant, depending on, like I said, your interaction with it, and that is pretty cool in itself. When you interact with the plant and it's putting out a particular sound, usually it's just one tone, or it's changing up slowly but surely. It's just going through like the natural cycle of the plant breathing. It's very deep. And when you touch the plant, or you go and run your hand across it, run it across the leaves and ruffle the leaves up a little bit, the different tones and frequencies change up in there. So it just adds to credence that this device is actually picking up the pulses coming out of the plants, and the plant is interacting with you, and you are interacting with the plant. So it's heavy, man. I really enjoy using devices like this. It's always a good way to expand the mind. People always ask me all the time, how do you know all this information? And I tell them all the time, I never went to school for this stuff. This was never like a study of mine that I wanted to get into, herbology and plants and such. It actually found me. And to be honest, you don't need to go to university. It's always nice to go and have a degree and get things like that, because people are looking for paperwork. But if you're looking to work for yourself, and you want to go out there and put in the work in the field and do the studies yourself and get the books and such, why not let that be your degree? People always ask, they're looking for to hire somebody with experience. Well, how do you get experience if the universities never put you out in the field, to get that on the job training, per se? And I think that's really important for people to understand. A lot of people say, oh, we got to go to school for making beats, for making music production. Yeah, it's always nice to go to school for it. It's beautiful. But at the same time, a lot of things can be self-taught, because everybody has particular styles. And, the knowledge is everlasting. There's not a day goes by where I don't continue to learn something new, whether or not it's working on the computers, working on instrumentals. We'll give a quick example here. So I've been working in a recording program called Studio One. If anybody's ever heard of this or familiar with it, Studio One. So I'll make my beats or make my instrumentals inside of a machine, and then I'll go ahead and import those files into Studio One, and that's where I'll record my vocals and such. And something that I never knew is that when I was mixing, I was exporting my mix down so I could listen to it and convert it into an MP3, listen to it on my phone or send it somewhere. Every time I was mixing it down, I was having just some type of metallic sound coming through all the time. It's all the effects that I put on and created a beautiful mix. It did not show in the MP3 version, and it was always something that bummed me out for the past year. Every song I did that to, it was coming out the same way, and kind of got me disheartened a little bit. But I was able to go back into Studio One, and I learned something new from, like I said, doing some research. You have to go do your own research, in order to discover the answers and solutions to things. Some things are so simple. I don't know why I waited a whole year, to research this, but it goes to show you, how we live in the age of technology. So make sure to utilize it properly, especially for what you're into. If you're looking for answers to a question, or if you're looking for help, it's always good to research something and see the way somebody else is doing it, because it may inspire something inside yourself as well. Nonetheless, back to what I was saying, I was able to I was able to watch that video, and it was able to show me what I was doing wrong. And it happened to do with, two things, one called the sample rate and the other called the bit rate. The bit rate is how much of the material is allowed to be mixed in. 64 kbps would be like the minimum on it. And that just makes a really, really watered down sound. You lose all the effects. It sounds a terrible mix. I believe the highest one is 320 kbps. Kilobits per second. I'm pretty sure that's what it stands for. And when you mix it down at the higher one, like so. So always remember that when you're mixing down any particular program, because the setting or the preferences might be put down like that automatically. But you go into the preferences for your mix down when you're going to export, and you change the bit rate. You can leave the sample rate, but make sure you change that bit rate to the highest one on there, so you really get that quality. You don't lose anything when you mix down, you know. And it winds up producing a great sounding mix. You know, it sounds to me there's almost little to no difference in what it sounds like when you're listening to the WAV file compared to mixing it down at 320 kilobits per second. Know what I'm saying? So make sure you check your bit rate anytime you're exporting from any particular program, because it's a mistake that I made for the longest time, and you know, all it took was a little bit of research to do. And when you do a little bit of research, it goes to show, you know, it could go a long way. And knowledge always has to have application, you know. If what is knowledge without use, it becomes nothing. It has to be applied, you know. You can't let it go. You understand? So something deep, man. Something else I wanted to get into today has to do has to do with the music once again, you know, and the way that we've allowed our minds to become distorted and get out of tune to things. You know what I'm saying? I see a lot of people, you know, claiming righteousness all the time and always going around jamming something wicked, you know, or it may not sound wicked to them, you know, but the particular music that they're jamming, these particular artists, you know, they happen to be something that's detrimental to the community. A lot of them push Black Death, you know, and if you know what I'm talking about when I say that, you understand. Has to do with talking about serving dope, serving the drugs, you know, promoting the killing. You know, where is the love, man? You know, it seems like we've lost that particular vibration, and it's important that we start going back to that. And I bring that up to say that there's just so many people beefing nowadays, and every time you flip onto you know, World Star, you flip onto Complex, or whatever it is, your particular website that you're getting your information from, your music information from, they always have some, it'd be like the biggest headline, and they're always highlighting, you know, fights and beefs and stuff like that, but they're never highlighting the good work that people are actually putting in, the good artists, the conscious artists, not the ones that are, you know, rappers or recording artists pretending, meaning that somebody went out and selected them and say, hey, you know, let me be your puppet master and I got this role for you to play. So we have to be mindful of things like that, and that translates into our personal life as well. You know, we have to be mindful of the company we keep, because who you surround yourself with is who you're going to become later in life as well, man. So it has to be understood. And we're going to get into something else here really quick too, man. Let's talk about what we got coming up with myself coming up here in the springtime. So we got a mushroom forge that I'm putting together coming up here. And this particular mushroom forge is going to take place in Brown County Forest, National Forest, and it's going to be in Brown County, Indiana, which is like down by Bloomington. They got campground and all type of beautiful nature things like that, different trails to take on, and it's just a beautiful landscape down there. It's unlike what we have up here. What we have up here in northwest Indiana is something very special as well, with these dunes and such. You can't find nowhere else in the world like that. But down here in Brown County, it's another change in scenery and landscape. And you go down there. So what we're planning on doing, we're looking to go down there right around April, going into May, as the weather starts to ripen up and we start to get nice humidity outside, and becomes a little more wet, and the temperature starts to level out a little bit. You see, we need the ground to be roughly, they believe it's 52 degrees Fahrenheit, in order for the mushroom spores to start to take its form, you know. And it's tricky with the mushrooms, because, you know, you have to be really on point as to when you're going out to harvest them up, because if you go out there one day when the weather's not right, you're not going to find them. But the very next day, the whole entire attributes of the environment could change up overnight, and all your mushrooms will start to pop up. So you really have a small window to get out there and catch them. So we're looking to put it together for like the end of April going into May, and I'll keep everybody posted up on that. But we're looking to it's going to be $100 fee for the trip, and that's going to cover the ride down there. We're looking to get like a van, one of those transit buses. We're looking to haul, you know, a group of people down there with us. It'd be $100 for everybody to come, for the individual to come down, and we'll provide, you know, all your amenities and stuff like that. If you need stuff to drink and you know, usually when we hike on the trail, we don't like to think about bringing like a lot of food with us and stuff like that, because it's just, you know, you're going to hike on the trail, you're not going for a dinner. So we always want to make sure that we're bringing like trail food and such with us, man, and make sure that we have, you know, essentials with us. Always make sure we pack in water. Make sure you have a knife if necessary, and make sure you have a bag for collecting mushrooms and such. But this is you know, trip of a lifetime, and most people don't get to experience something like this. So I think it'll be really interesting to haul a group of people down there with us. And if nobody decides to come, that's all right too, you know, because I'm gonna go down there and harvest up. I like to go down there and deal with all the mushrooms and plant life and stuff like that. That's beautiful to me. So for anybody who wants to come down there and learn and get a lot of fat put on their head, and you know, come back with the bounty of mushrooms and other different medicinal herbs to embark on their journey, or to add to their apothecary, you know, feel free to link up, man. You can get in contact with me in the direct message of ancient_mystic_inc. Shoot me a direct message. That's ancient_mystic_inc. And you can get at me on there if you're interested in coming along too. You could do Cash App or link up, and we could do cash payment. But I'll be putting together a flyer and things of that nature. I'm just giving anybody who's tuning in a heads up. You know, I've been putting this together for a couple of months, and you know, it gives me anxiety thinking about it, because mushroom hunting is just like planting up a seed or planting up your plants. You know, there was a year 2 years ago, in 2019, 2020 season, where we lost over 500 plants. I think that, excuse me, just about 500 plants. I think the total count was 470 and some, you know, 478, 479. I can't remember the exact total, but it was right there, 470 something. And that's a lot of plants to lose. And that was all due to, you know, coming outside too early, going in the ground too early, and that freak frost coming through. We live in Northwest Indiana, so this is like a microclimate up here, especially as we get toward the lake, or we get a little further south of the lake. We just get hammered by awkward weather events all the time. And that frost came through and wiped the plants out within a day. And that was very unfortunate. So mushroom cultivating or harvesting is like the same way. You know, you go out there and you have to make sure that the environments are right. So my heart's always beating out my chest. You know, nonetheless, it'd be a nice trip. Brown County State Forest. Yeah, Brown County State Forest. Like I said, I'll be putting the flyer out fairly soon, and y'all can get in tune for that. And we got a couple other adventures coming up as well. For anybody who wants to get involved, couple of different harvesting adventures where we're looking to take some trips out to some different locations. I'm not going to disclose them at the moment, as I'm in the process of putting some things together. So as soon as I have more information, I will release it as well. But it's going to be a very fruitful spring, and it's right around the corner. Let's talk about the equinox as well. You know, that's something that has been very renowned through many cultures around the world. When we think about the equinox, we think about the word and how it's breaking down the etymology of the word per se. So the etymology of the word, we think equinox, you know, that comes from an old Latin word equis, or equal, and nox, like nocturnal, night. So equal nights, that's what that stands for. And I guess in the English translation, you know, the equinox would be, you know, the days of the year where the sun crosses the equator. You know what I'm saying? To start its transition to go further north for the summer months to the Tropic of Cancer, and the further south, you know, as it crosses the equator, headed the further south to the Tropic of Capricorn. And these both lie on 23.5 degrees latitude. Keep that in mind. And these particular celestial events were very renowned throughout many cultures, and a lot of people revered the sun. A lot of cultures and tribes revered the sun for many different reasons. You know, I think first off, we have to recognize that, you know, soul is the life force. You know, without the sun, what would be around? What would be able to thrive? Nothing really. You know, I think there's some discoveries down in caves and at the bottom of the oceans, you know, where you have things like these, they look like little tubes or little vents. I think they call them some type of thermal worm or some type of invertebrate like that. Nonetheless, they thrive in places with little to no light, and for that to happen is pretty rare within nature. But nonetheless, us as humans and a lot of us plant life around us, would not be able to survive in an environment like that. We need pristine conditions for us to thrive and for us to even be here. So that's why a lot of ancient cultures revered the sun, but it also played an important part in crops. I think a lot of people always look at the mystic side of things, but it's also important to acknowledge, on a agricultural level. This was something that was key to, well, we got the other elements, the sun, the rain, precipitation. Both of those things go hand in hand. So if the sun wasn't out, the crops didn't grow. Imagine a volcano erupting and putting out the sun for a little period of time. Imagine how much crop life would die off and how many people would come about with sickness. Serious thing to think about. Let's dive down to Mesoamerica and a place we know called Mexica, or the country of Mexico. And we travel down to Teotihuacan, and we go even further south into Guatemala. Okay, and we think about the pyramid called El Castillo. Now, El Castillo, also known as the Pyramid of the Serpent or the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl, is a particular pyramid that was built in honor of what they called the feather serpent. Was like the god of the skies, the god of the heavens. It had many different interpretations, but Quetzalcoatl, and it was revered throughout other different Mexican societies as well, or different tribes or cultures in Mexico. This particular pyramid was built with 90 steps on each of its four sides. And you think about it, 90 steps. Why would they build something with 90 steps? Well, let's break it down a little bit. Before man came over to the Americas and started conquering and killing off folks and stuff like that, and making people convert, these particular cultures, before they came over here and implied the Julian calendar, which was the predecessor to what we are following today, called the Gregorian calendar. There was no way to the way that they marked their days or their years was in seasons, or even on the Mayan calendar, they call them baktuns. Okay, and some of these they could stretch on for many years. Some of them could be 10 years long. Others can be a year long, 365 days. But they were able to mark this down into such a celestial accuracy that is astounding. On the particular pyramid, El Castillo, there's 90 steps on each of the four sides, and each of those sets of 90 steps represents what we know as a season. Okay, and this is very important because not all things that you plant up, not all fruits that you plant up or foods that you plant up are going to bloom in particular environments. We think about mangoes. Mangoes grow in a tropical environment, but they don't bloom all year round. There's particular seasons for them to bloom up, and it was very important for our ancestors to go ahead and acknowledge this and be able to track the sun to such precision, such accuracy, to where they could build something as a model or a relic, or what am I trying to think of the right word? Something in reverence to a higher creation. Nonetheless, on one side of the pyramid, there's and this, like I said, once it has to do with the celestial accuracy of how they planted this particular pyramid on the ground. It's at such a level of precision that on each equinox, which we have two. We have the spring, which is roughly between March 20th and March 23rd, and then we also have the fall equinox, which falls in September, roughly 22nd, 23rd as well. And when the sun comes around and comes through that same particular plane that is crossing in the celestial realm, it's shining down onto this particular pyramid, casting a shadow on the particular serpent. It's like an ascending staircase. So there's a serpent head at the end, and as the light is shined onto the particular pyramid, El Castillo, the shadow makes itself look like, I guess, how am I trying to say it? Like humps. Here, follow my finger here. Like humps. You understand? Boom, boom. And it works its way all the way down and gives it the appearance of a snake slithering down from the top all the way to the bottom, where the sun engulfs the head. As time progresses throughout the day, it'll wind up engulfing the heads of the serpents at the end of the pyramid, which marks in what the story of Quetzalcoatl says, is that, you know, Quetzalcoatl during the equinox will come down to the earth and, you know, go back in. He will roam the earth. You know, he will go back to the land in a sense. You know, and this all had to do with agriculture and planting, and that was, you know, it's something for people not to always misinterpret with the, I don't know, what the mainstream says. You know what I'm saying? Because we could tend to be misled a little bit and make to think that we're inferior to the ancestors, and we have to kind of question things, because put things into perspective, because we think of how advanced different cultures around the world were, you know, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. You know, each different culture went through different periods of peaks and lows. You know, life is like a sine wave, they say. You know, the world has been like a sine wave. History is like a sine wave. We always have these tremendous peaks, and then we drop to these, you know, tremendous lows where, you know, society just collapses and civilizations die off and new ones come about. And we just have, in my perspective, we just have the technologies that we have just as equal, if not lesser than the technologies they had back then. The technologies we have are just based on the materials that we have nowadays. You know, it's hard for us to even replicate what they did way back then, and that's because we're not working with those materials long enough. You know, repetition always over time, you know, allows you to get better at something. And if people were consistently doing something, it becomes a trait, you know, and it could be passed down to many other people as well. So I feel like it's always important to acknowledge that, you know, and we kind of look at, like, the ancients are the ones who lack the knowledge, because that's where the beginning knowledge comes from. You know, think about it. We use all these, like, power tools nowadays, but what about before power tools? What about before the drill? What did they have? Things like screwdrivers or other different, you know, drill mechanisms that they had. And then they had the drill. And some people, they don't know how to use particular tools because they're allowing the computers to do everything. So I think it's important that we always show reverence and hang on to those old attributes, you know, that the ancients brought about. So something to keep in mind as well. All right, man. Y'all give me one hot second, man. I need to pull up one particular piece on here. Something that I just wanted to share that I have found interesting as well, man. This is a personal observation of myself. So I see my niece, you know, was looking at one of her old writings and stuff like that. We always draw and make arts and crafts and things of that nature. And I watch a lot of youth do this as well. So this is not just one in particular, but some people, they'll write from right to left. And you think back into the ancient cultures, and we think of you know, different scripts, like Arabic, Aramaic. We have even Hebrew. You know, you think about when somebody's reading the Torah. When you see a rabbi reading the Torah, he always reads from right to left. You know, and they could read. You know, Hebrew can read from left to right, but the way they write their text, the way it should be read is from right to left, because it's such an old world script. You know what I'm saying? Persian is another one, and Kurdish is the next one as well. And there's probably a few more that I'm not listing, but those are the main ones that people probably are familiar with. And I haven't been able to find a particular reason, not even in my head, as to why, you know, people were doing, why people started out writing from right to left at first, and then it changed from left to right around 100 BC, when so and this supposedly what they say, when the Chinese or the Cantonese started to produce paper. And it seemed to be easier to write from left to right, because majority people in the world were right-handed, and writing from left to right on the paper would not allow you to smudge, you know, with the felt tip pen that most people were using way back when. And just think about it. If you try to write from right to left, it's very hard to get something consistent. You always wind up having a smudge. Try writing with a Sharpie or a marker from right to left. It becomes extremely difficult, and becomes extremely messy as well. And I think that's probably has to be a reason, probably the most credible reason as to why people in this world had started to write from left to right rather from right to left, because in the original, there was no paper. There was kind of like drawing on cave or stone and such, and there wasn't, everything was being etched. It wasn't necessarily being written. And then as time progressed and, writing material came about where people could write on papers and things of that nature, it was more easy and more legible to write it from left to right. But I just found it interesting how a child, starts out, writing their stuff backwards. Some of them do, not everybody, but some children will start writing from left to right. Excuse me, right to left. I'm confusing myself. Somebody writes in lefts and lefts and rights. But it's very interesting how that is, and I find that a reflection to people, adding to people's levels of evolution, I guess you'd say, and being able to, like I said, we can't always look back onto the ancients and knock them for this, because everything gets better in time and repetition. You always find better and easier ways to do it. But even with writing too, it's kind of become out of touch. There was a point in time in my life where I was doing so much typing on the computer, especially when I was out of school, like for the summertime, and I wasn't, going to school for summer, that if I wasn't writing or doing anything of that nature, I go back to school and writing would be foreign. I wouldn't. It's kind of a lost motor skill. But just like anything, as you start to pick back up on it and do it again, it becomes something, that you pick back up on. It's something that's never forgotten. I find it interesting as well. But nonetheless, just to add to it, a little fun fact: roughly 12 to, I believe it's 18% of people in the world are left-handed, and out of that 12 to 18%, roughly 13% are women. So it's pretty interesting facts to put together. Being left-handed might be a special thing. I'll have to apologize, man. My stuff is acting up today. It's a terrible day for all of this to go down, man. Especially when I'm ripping and running, trying to get back, in time to start the show. Having technical difficulty. Technology is supposed to make things easier for us, but it tends to fail a lot. Let's talk a little bit about music as well too. Something that I've been listening a lot to lately. I always like to expand my genres when it comes to different forms of music. And one genre I've always been really keen with happens to be like Native American flute music, and there's different tribes and different instruments, like wood instruments carved from wood. Like in particular, there's wooden cedar pipes, that you can play in the key of A or in the key of G or in the key of E. There's so many different beautiful keys that you could play in, and these are six note. They call them six note pipes. And there's so many different ones, and they're all intricately crafted, create a beautiful sound. And like I said, we'll dive a little bit deeper next week as well, once we do our continuation with the plant wave and such. And it's going to be a beautiful experience, I'll tell you that much. But just to be able to listen to the sounds of the flute and hear the sounds that's coming out of the plants, that the plants are producing, these electromagnetic impulses that are being registered in waves and transferred over to MIDI file, and therefore being put out as in a particular wave format. I just find it so interesting how these sounds from like the Native Americans playing the flutes or even playing the drums in other different cultures, they just go hand in hand with it. And when you think back to the ancient culture as well, they used to be out there, going out into nature, vision quest, or walking out there and paying homage to the ancestor, paying homage to Creator, and they played these different particular notes. And I remember going out in the woods one time last summer, going into fall time, and playing a few notes on the wooden pipe that I have tuned to the key of, the key of A. I almost said G, but I gave the G pipe to my uncle, the key of A. And you could almost make bird sounds on there, different animal noises, calls, and sounds of things of that nature. But to hear the animals interact with you, and to listen to the wind sounds and the way that the wind sounds interact with what you're playing or how you're interacting with them, it's such a beautiful experience, a deep experience, and I guess it throws you back to, it almost allows you to live vicarious, in the way of the ancestors, and you think about how they were able to maintain their in tuneness. People always talk about, they have conversations with the creator. And to me, it was a lot more divine back then. We've been kind of washed out of a lot of things nowadays because of the frequency around us. I just seen something wicked the other day too, and I'm glad we talk about this stuff. Glad we have a platform to talk about this, because a lot of stuff is not shown out there for everybody to see. But down in Mexico, I want to say Mexico. Um, I can't remember the city off the top of my head, but a huge flock of birds. It had to have been looked like 1,000 birds or so, man. Was caught on a CCTV footage, and these birds just dropped out of the sky, man. Dropped out of the sky, and I believe majority of them died, or the rest of them were just discombobulated, didn't know what the heck was going on, and they haven't came out and gave the full report. But what it sounds like from the information that is out there is that this was some type of electromagnetic frequency, or some type of pulse that was in the air, and it hit these birds and dropped them right out of the sky, just jacking them up. And we see this happening more and more frequent now, and I'm not sure that it's all due to man-made stuff, but I think that we pay a high price, because Mother Nature pays a high price because of the efforts that man puts into manipulating the atmosphere and the environments and stuff like that. And something to be mindful of. There's a lot of different, it's a deep subject when we start to think about it, because there's a lot of different notes and different frequencies that you could play and mess with, in order to control the mind, on such subtle levels. I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago too, when we brought up about how the solar flares, when they're ejected off of the sun and they interact with Earth, how they affect the human endocrine system as well, which is where our hormones are regulated. And this causes people to become more anxious, lose sleep, become insomniac, and become more irritable and agitated, and even suicide rates went up because of that in one particular city called Kirovsk in Russia. And that was pretty interesting as well, to take in consideration. But we could see things happening close to places like HARP, where they're imitating these particular solar flares, these high frequency levels of radiation. And when they put out these pulses, they can even be picked up on their Geiger meters and EMF meters, picking up electromagnetic frequencies, and they register this through the roof. And some people, I don't know if it's all, because I never been there myself, but based on a lot of the information that I've read and the discernment that I've used, a lot of people experience a sickness or a sense of discombobulation, or even some people that go almost to like a blackout, and they don't know what the heck happens. All they know is that they'll wake up and they'll have a headache, and they won't have any recollection of what had happened in the moments prior or previous to the episode that they had or experienced. And something to be extremely mindful of. If you've ever been around a frequency that you could feel like that, maybe you've been around a power line or something, when in the heat of the summer, when you could just hear and feel that electricity flowing through that. Or maybe you've dealt with tuners before, tuning forks. So that's another interesting piece of work as well. And that's probably the most relevant way to prove this information that we're discussing right now, as far as the frequencies being harmful. And we think about it right now, all music is tuned to 440 hertz. So if I hit a 440 hertz tuning fork and I just put it around us, it wouldn't do nothing to you. It feels extremely natural. It feels like such a natural frequency. But if I were to alter that and change it back to what it used to be, 432 hertz, this brings about a different sensation. And when I did this on the particular program that I was using to produce instrumentals, which was Machine, I would put the tuning fork to 432, and when I put it on, that thing would ring, until I turned it off. And as soon as it started ringing, it started making me feel nauseous and just dizzy in the head. And I had a headache and I felt totally sick. You know, it really messed me up. And I'm pretty sure I felt the effects all the way into the next day. But when I turned it off, you know, that sensation went away, you know, the discombobulation or the disorientation. So it's very interesting how that, and that just comes from a computer program. That's not even a real tuning fork or something that's been turned into like a sound weapon or produced or projected through a larger speaker. And it's very interesting. Like I said, we go all the way back to the studies of what they call somatics, or how sound takes its shape, how it could be projected into these particular sacred geometrical forms. And we see how a lot of these, what we call natural frequencies or natural tones, they resonate so much better when it comes to the structure of the particular sacred geometrical shape. Everything is very uniform and very beautiful looking. But as soon as you alter the frequency, you know, to something that's unnatural, you know, something that doesn't resonate. Like I said, we think about, you know, two radio stations trying to resonate on the same level. You know, only one could be on that level. But what we see is just a total discombobulation. And just imagine if we're seeing how these particular sounds are forming on a level like that. Just imagine, you know, what's going on when particular frequencies are being projected out there. It could be a note so subtle, or so low, or so high pitched. Many people may remember the dog whistle that people used to have on their cell phones back in the day. People would play that, you know, in the school, and it'd be wigging people out. But we have to be mindful of that stuff, because that stuff could be dangerous as well, and it could be harmful to different parts of the brain. We discussed it a little bit before when we talked about how it's being used, you know, as a weapon, you know, as a weapon against man. And they use it out in particular places where you have a lot of United States diplomats or people that's coming into the embassies and such. And you know, anybody who gets gets a little upset at America, they're going to go ahead and do something so subtle like that. And what they was doing down there at the embassy, there was some type of frequency being projected, and it was causing the ears to bleed and causing people's brains to have permanent brain damage from this stuff, you know. So like I said, just imagine, think about radiation. Radiation you can't hear, but radiation is a particular like wavelength or frequency, and this thing can cause cancer. Can cause cancer in the body, and can also kill off cancer cells as well. So, I mean, it's something to be mindful of and really pay attention to while you're out there. You know, if you hear unnatural tones or frequencies, you know, some people even report hearing those things in the sky. You know, where it's coming from, I think it takes a little bit more research, you know, for us to get down to the bottom of it and find the answers. And rather than just research, a little more field studies. You know, it's important for us to get out there and conduct the studies. We have to be our own scientists, you know. Absolutely, my good brother. It's been used since the ancients, you know. And let's go there. We're gonna go there now. You just, you know, sparked a wonderful conversation in my head here. So let's talk about it, man. When we think about the Holy Wars, the Crusades. You know, when the Crusades first started, we started having, it was a war of sound. We had, you know, everybody meeting up on these particular hilltops from different corners of the world. You had your Hebrews, you had your Muslim or Islam, and you had your Arabics, and then you had, you know, the Catholics, people coming from Vatican City. Everybody showed up with their chants. You know, everybody had their chants. You know, think about when you hear somebody. Think about when you hear Muslim or somebody practicing Islam. You know, start working in their chants, and you hear the Hebrews. They have their chants or their hymns, and then you have the Catholics with their hymns as well. There was a war of sounds being fought, and it just escalated from there. And it's something that's never stopped. You know, it's something that's being fought to this day. You know what I'm saying? We'll discuss that at next time, but it's something that's still going on to this day, for all of you know. But yeah, the very first wars of the Crusades were fought with sound, and I think it's interesting to recognize that too. Sound is very powerful, and we always see how it affects us, you know, indirectly or directly. And there's so many different spectrums of frequencies or wavelengths. So I think it's important that, you know, we start to explore a little more. If there's devices that allow us to listen into these particular frequencies, or if it's just about getting us a little more in tune so that we could pick up on the frequencies. I think all of it's going to be a lot more helpful into how we can, you know, become more in tune, you know, rather than allow, you know, man to come interpret nature synthetically and then cause us to be discombobulated or mind controlled or disoriented. So it's always something to be mindful of, man. You know, we live in a very large world with vast amounts of knowledge available. We live in the age of the internet, you know, so don't allow yourself to be easily fooled. Don't be gullible, you know, be unbiased. Don't be on one side of the fence or the other. Always make sure you take in any information with a grain of salt, you know. Take the information in. That doesn't mean you have to use it, but see what the information has to offer and see where it takes you, because it can open up a lot of different, it can connect a lot of dots and maybe open up a lot of different doors that you had never expected. So it becomes something very deep, man. All right, y'all. We're going to be wrapping it up here in just a moment. I've got a couple things to attend to this evening time. Seems like when you do something good, or when you do the job the right way, everybody wants to take part in your time. Everybody wants your time, you know. So I always try to give as much time as I can, a little bit here, a little bit there, and hope it goes a long way for people. No, time is very valuable. Time is something that we can't get back, you know. And if we live too far in the future, or if we're always thinking in the past, you know, we're always going to forget about being present. You know, I find myself nowadays being able to resonate with the world around me, being in a totally different mindset. And, you know, they say when your life is miserable, you know, the days drag by, you know, the days are just, they're never ending. And they say that when you're living your best life, when you're vibing high, you're vibrating high, you know, time seems to just fly by. It's like you blink and you miss it. And, you know, it seems like time has been flying by for me. You know, I've been being such a warrior, living in the present. And it's been very beautiful to experience life like that. It's a total 180 from where I come from in life and to what I am now. So I always got to give thanks to the Most High for that, man. It's something that, you know, couple things in life, couple of divine interventions, you know, allow me to become who I am today and to, you know, be fortunate enough to be the sacred keeper of the knowledge, you know. I always try to have an answer for somebody. That's why I always do so much research, you know. And if I don't know, I make sure to say that I don't know, because there's so much more for us to learn out there. Know what I'm saying? Nonetheless, we're gonna wrap it up here just now. You know, we're a couple minutes early, but that's all right. We're gonna come back next week with a bang. Like I said, I got a great lesson in store for y'all next week, man. So y'all should stay in tune. You don't want to miss this one, because it's gonna be very interactive. You understand? Hey, man. Enough respect, man. We're gonna continue to teach, man. Each one teach one, reach one, my good brethren. You understand? And appreciate you being in tune. Sometimes I feel like I could be rambling. Sometimes I feel like I'm not making so much sense. But y'all have to try to stick with me. You understand? It's been a long day, long week, and I appreciate it all, man. Appreciate everybody who's giving an ear, because, like I say, each one teach one, reach one. Rastafari, man. Real talk. Nonetheless, let's wrap it up for this evening time. Marley King, Chris Lyon. It's been another wonderful Tuesday evening with y'all. We're gonna start getting some more sunlight here as soon as the spring equinox come around the corner, and we're gonna start taking things to more. You know how it was last year. I'm bringing out the sombrero. We're gonna have the glasses. You know, we're gonna get serious, man. We're gonna get back outside in Mother Nature and really have a nice podcast interaction outside and get back in tune. You know what I'm saying? That's the goal for this year, man. For a lot of people to get back in tune. You know, it's the age of Aquarius. So let's get it, man. All right, y'all. Until next, 2 Tuesdays from now. So see you 2 Tuesdays from now. It's been a wonderful evening time with y'all, man. Give thanks for rocking with me. It's Marley King, RockTrue Beatz. Like always, man. Peace.